Marcus Wellington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his Manhattan penthouse, watching the city lights flicker below like scattered diamonds. His reflection stared back at him, a man who had built an empire from nothing, now worth $3 billion. The morning sun had just begun to paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. But Marcus felt no peace in the beauty before him. His fiancée, Victoria Ashford, was still asleep in their bedroom. Her platinum blonde hair would be spread across the silk pillowcase, her face peaceful in rest. They were scheduled to marry in 3 weeks, and the wedding had already become the talk of New York's elite social circles. Victoria had insisted on every detail being perfect: the imported flowers, the designer dress, the guest list that read like a Fortune 500 directory. Marcus walked to the kitchen, his bare feet silent on the marble floors. The penthouse was a masterpiece of modern architecture, all clean lines and expensive materials. He had bought it 5 years ago, back when he was just a millionaire, not yet the billionaire the media loved to write about. Now, at 42, he had everything a man could want. Or so everyone told him. The coffee machine hummed to life, filling the kitchen with the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Marcus checked his watch. 6:30 a.m. In an hour, his household staff would arrive, led by Dorothy Hayes, the woman who had managed his home for the past 4 years. Dorothy was more than just a housekeeper. She was efficient, trustworthy, and had become something of a steady presence in his chaotic world. As if on cue, Marcus heard the private elevator chime. Dorothy had a key card and permission to arrive early. She appeared in the kitchen doorway moments later, a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat bun. But something was different this morning. Her usual calm demeanor seemed strained. Her hands clutched her purse tightly. "Good morning, Mr. Wellington," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced over her shoulder toward the bedroom hallway, as if checking whether they were truly alone. "Morning, Dorothy," Marcus replied. Noting her unusual tension, "Coffee? No, thank you." "Sir," she said, stepping closer to him. Her eyes darted around the kitchen nervously. "Mr. Wellington, I need to speak with you about something important. Something I discovered yesterday afternoon." Marcus set down his coffee cup. Giving her his full attention, Dorothy was not the type to be dramatic or create unnecessary concern. If she said something was important, he believed her. "What is it?" he asked. Keeping his voice low to match hers, Dorothy took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached into her purse. She pulled out a small object wrapped in a cloth napkin. When she unfolded it on the kitchen counter, Marcus saw what appeared to be a tiny electronic device no bigger than a button with a lens in the center. "I found this yesterday when I was cleaning the master bedroom," Dorothy said. Her words rushed and urgent. "It was hidden inside the decorative vase on your dresser, the one near the sitting area. I only noticed it because the vase had been moved slightly, and when I went to straighten it, this fell out." Marcus picked up the device carefully, examining it under the kitchen lights. His background in technology, he had started his first company developing security software, told him exactly what he was looking at. It was a hidden camera, small and sophisticated, the kind used for covert surveillance. "Are you certain about where you found this?" Marcus asked, his mind already racing through implications. "I'm positive, sir," Dorothy replied, her voice steadying now that she had shared her burden. "I've cleaned that bedroom 1,000 times. I know every item, every placement. That camera wasn't there last week. Someone put it there recently." Marcus felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. His penthouse had state-of-the-art security keycard access, cameras in all common areas, a doorman who knew every approved visitor. Only a handful of people had unrestricted access to his private quarters. He thought of Victoria, who lived with him, his personal assistant, James, who occasionally dropped off documents, and Dorothy and her small cleaning staff. "Has anyone else been in the apartment this week?" Marcus asked. "Any maintenance workers, delivery people?" Dorothy shook her head. "No, sir. I keep a log of everyone who enters. As you requested, just the regular staff. Miss Ashford and yourself. That's all." The implication hung in the air between them. Unspoken but unmistakable, Marcus looked toward the bedroom hallway again. Victoria had been acting slightly different lately, more interested in his business calls, asking questions about his investments and partnerships. He had dismissed it as pre-wedding nerves, or perhaps her way of trying to be more involved in his life. "Mr. Wellington," Dorothy said softly, pulling his attention back, "be careful. Someone planted that camera deliberately, someone who has access to your most private spaces. I don't know what their intentions are, but it can't be good." Marcus nodded slowly, his business instincts kicking into gear. He had not built a billion-dollar empire by being careless or trusting without verification. "Dorothy, I need you to do something for me," he said quietly. "Don't mention this to anyone. Act normally. Keep your regular schedule." "Can you do that?" "Of course, sir," she replied, relief evident in her expression. She had been carrying this secret, unsure of how he would react. "Should I check for more cameras?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "If there are others, I don't want whoever placed them to know we're looking. I'll handle this myself." He paused, considering his next words carefully. "Dorothy, thank you. Not many people would have the courage to bring this to me. You may have saved me from something terrible." Dorothy managed a small smile. "You've been good to me and my family, Mr. Wellington. You gave my son a job when no one else would, after his troubles. This is the least I can do." After Dorothy left to begin her regular duties in other parts of the penthouse, Marcus remained in the kitchen. The tiny camera resting in his palm, he thought about Victoria, about their whirlwind romance that had begun at a charity gala 18 months ago. She had been charming, beautiful, and seemingly unimpressed by his wealthy quality he had found refreshing. But now, holding this device, Marcus wondered if he had been blind. He thought about their conversations, the way Victoria had encouraged him to work from home more often, suggesting he take calls in the bedroom where it was quieter. He remembered how she had insisted on redecorating his private spaces, choosing every accessory, every piece of furniture, including that decorative vase. The sun had fully risen now, flooding the penthouse with golden light to anyone looking in. Marcus Wellington appeared to be a man who had it all: success, wealth, and a beautiful fiancée. But he now knew the truth. Someone he trusted had betrayed him, and he was determined to find out why. He slipped the camera into his pocket and walked toward his private office. There were phone calls to make, people to contact, resources to deploy. If Victoria or whoever had planted this device thought they could manipulate or spy on him without consequences, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. Marcus Wellington had not become a billionaire by being anyone's fool. And he was not about to start now. Marcus closed the door to his private office, the hidden camera still weighing heavy in his pocket like a stone of betrayal. The office was his sanctuary, a room where billion-dollar deals had been negotiated and life-changing decisions had been made. Oak shelves lined with business books and awards stood against one wall, while the opposite side held a collection of framed photographs his parents, now deceased, his younger sister Emma, and several shots of him receiving various honors. He sat at his mahogany desk and pulled out his personal phone, not the company device that Victoria sometimes borrowed to check her social media. This phone was encrypted, used only for his most sensitive communications. Marcus had not survived in the ruthless world of high-stakes business without learning to be careful, to protect his interests, to verify before trusting. The first call went to Richard Hayes, head of security and a former FBI agent who now ran a boutique security firm serving Manhattan's elite. Richard had been with Marcus for 6 years, handling everything from background checks on potential business partners to sweeping his offices for surveillance devices. If anyone could help him navigate this situation discreetly, it was Richard. Marcus. Richard answered on the second ring, his voice alert despite the early hour. "What's wrong?" "I need you at the penthouse," Marcus said quietly. "Come alone. Use the service entrance. Don't announce yourself to anyone." There was a brief pause. Richard knew better than to ask questions over the phone. 30 minutes, he confirmed. Marcus ended the call and leaned back in his chair. Staring at the ceiling, his mind wandered to Victoria, still sleeping peacefully down the hall. They had met at the Metropolitan Museum of Art during a charity gala for children's education. She had been standing alone, studying a Renaissance painting, wearing a simple black dress that somehow stood out among all the excessive designer gowns. He had approached her, expecting the usual recognition, the calculated interest that his wealth typically attracted. But Victoria had seemed genuinely unaware of who he was. They had talked about art, about travel, about life's simple pleasures. She told him she worked as an art consultant for private collectors, helping them acquire pieces for their personal galleries. It had seemed like a perfect profession for someone with her sophistication and knowledge. Their courtship had been intense. Victoria was charming, intelligent, and unlike any woman he had dated before. She did not demand expensive gifts or exotic trips. Instead, she seemed content with quiet dinners and long conversations. When he had finally proposed 6 months ago at a private vineyard in Napa Valley, she had cried tears of joy, calling him the best thing that ever happened to her. Now, Marcus wondered if all of it had been an elaborate performance, a long con designed to gain his trust and access to his life. The thought made his stomach turn. He had been married once before, in his early 30s, to a woman named Catherine who had loved him before the billions, before the fame. They had divorced amicably when she realized she could not handle the pressure of his increasingly public life. Catherine had never wanted his money. She had only wanted peace, and he had respected her enough to let her go. But Victoria was different. She had embraced his lifestyle, encouraged him to expand his social circle, insisted they attend more events and galas. She had convinced him to hire a publicist, to do interviews, to raise his profile. At the time, he had thought she was helping him understand the importance of his influence, the good he could do by being more visible. Now he wondered if she had been making him a more valuable target. A soft knock on the office door pulled Marcus from his thoughts. He checked his watch. Only 20 minutes had passed. Richard must have been nearby. Marcus crossed the room and opened the door, finding his security chief dressed in casual clothes, looking like any other early morning visitor. "Show me," Richard said simply. Stepping inside and closing the door behind him, Marcus handed him the small camera. Richard examined it with the practiced eye of an expert, turning it over, studying its construction. His expression grew darker with each passing second. "This is professional grade," Richard said finally. "Not something you buy at an electronics store. This is the kind of equipment used by private investigators or corporate espionage teams, maybe even government agencies." He looked up at Marcus. "Where did you find it?" "Dorothy discovered it yesterday in my bedroom, hidden in a decorative vase on the dresser," Marcus explained. "She brought it to me this morning." Richard's jaw tightened. "Your bedroom? That's about as intimate as surveillance gets. Someone wants to know everything about you, your habits, your conversations, your vulnerabilities." He paused, considering. "Who has access to that room?" "Victoria. Obviously, Dorothy and her cleaning staff. My assistant James occasionally, but he rarely goes in there," Marcus said. "That's it. The penthouse security is tight." "You designed it yourself." "I did," Richard agreed, "which means this was an inside job. Someone with legitimate access who knew how to avoid suspicion." He met Marcus's gaze. "You're thinking it's Victoria. It was not a question. Marcus nodded slowly. The timing bothers me. She insisted on redecorating the bedroom 3 weeks ago. Brought in new furniture, new accessories. That vase was one of her choices. And lately, she's been asking more questions about my business, my investments. Things she never cared about before. Richard walked to the window, thinking we need to find out if there are more cameras. But we have to be careful if Victoria planted these, or if she's working with someone who did. We can't let them know we're onto them. He turned back to Marcus. I'm going to bring in my top sweep team, but we'll do it when Victoria is out of the apartment. Do you have her schedule for today? Marcus pulled out his phone and checked the calendar Victoria had shared with him. She has a fitting for her wedding dress at 11, then lunch with her bridesmaids at 1. She'll be gone for at least 4 hours. Perfect, Richard said. I'll have my team here at noon. We'll sweep the entire penthouse, every room, every device, every possible hiding place. He hesitated. Marcus, you need to prepare yourself. If we find more surveillance equipment, it confirms your suspicions. And if Victoria is behind this, we need to figure out why. Is she working alone? Is someone paying her? What's the end game? Marcus had already been asking himself these questions. My company is about to announce a major merger. It's been kept completely confidential. If that information got out to the wrong people, they could manipulate stock prices, undercut the deal, cost me hundreds of millions. He paused. Victoria has been in the room during some of my phone calls about the merger. I thought she was just reading or working on her laptop. Not paying attention, but she could have been recording everything, Richard finished. Marcus, this could be corporate espionage. If she's feeding information to competitors or market manipulators, we're talking about serious crimes, securities, fraud, insider trading. Maybe more. The weight of the situation settled over Marcus like a heavy blanket. He had built his empire through innovation and hard work, had played by the rules even when others cut corners. Now his own fiancée might be betraying him for money, using their intimate relationship as a weapon against him. There's something else, Marcus said quietly. 2 weeks ago, I changed my will. Made Victoria the primary beneficiary after my sister Emma. It was supposed to be a romantic gesture, showing her I was committed for life. He laughed bitterly. Victoria knew I was meeting with my lawyers. She asked me afterward if everything went well. I told her I had made her a very wealthy woman if anything ever happened to me. Richard's expression turned grave. Jesus, Marcus, you need to change that will today. If this is bigger than corporate espionage, someone sees you as more valuable dead than alive? I know, Marcus interrupted. I'll call my attorney as soon as his office opens. But Richard, I need to know the truth first. I need to understand what's really happening before I make any moves. If I'm wrong about Victoria, if there's another explanation, then we'll find out, Richard assured him. But until we know for certain, you need to be careful. Act normal around her. Don't let on that anything has changed. Can you do that? Marcus thought about it. About pretending everything was fine while suspecting the woman he loved of betrayal. It would be one of the hardest performances of his life. But he had negotiated with ruthless businessmen, had kept his composure through hostile takeover attempts and market crashes. He could manage this. I can do it, he said firmly. Richard nodded. Good. Now I need you to think carefully. Has Victoria done anything else unusual lately? Changed her routine, made new friends, spent time on her phone more than normal? Marcus considered the question. She's been texting someone a lot. When I ask who, she says it's her wedding planner or her mother. And she's been going out more in the evenings, meeting friends for drinks or dinner. She always invites me, but I'm usually working. He paused. Last week I came home early and heard her on the phone in the bedroom. When I walked in, she ended the call quickly. Said it was just her dress designer. We'll check her phone records, Richard said. and I want to put a tail on her. Discreetly, find out where she really goes. Who she really meets. Marcus felt a pang of guilt at the idea of spying on Victoria. But he pushed it aside. She might have been spying on him for months, gathering his secrets, planning something he could not yet imagine. He had a right to protect himself, to learn the truth. Do whatever you need to do, Marcus said. Just be discreet. I don't want her running before we understand what's happening. Richard checked his watch. I should go. Don't want to be here when she wakes up. I'll come back at noon with my team. He gripped Marcus's shoulder. We'll figure this out. You're not alone in this. After Richard left, Marcus remained in his office, watching the morning light grow stronger outside his windows. In a few hours, Victoria would wake up, kiss him good morning, talk about wedding plans and their future together. And he would smile and nod and pretend his world had not just been shaken to its foundation. He thought about Dorothy, the quiet housekeeper who had shown more loyalty and courage than his own fiancé. She had risked her job, possibly even her safety, to warn him. Marcus made a mental note to ensure Dorothy and her family were protected and rewarded. In a world where betrayal could come from the closest quarters, such loyalty was precious beyond measure. Marcus stood and walked back to the windows. Looking out at the city he had conquered, he had started with nothing. Built everything through intelligence and determination. And he was not about to let anyone, not even the woman he had planned to marry, destroy what he had created. The game had changed, and Marcus Wellington was ready to play. Victoria stirred awake around 9 o'clock. Stretching gracefully beneath the silk sheets, Marcus had already returned to the bedroom after his meeting with Richard, positioning himself at the reading chair with his tablet. Pretending to review business reports, he looked up as she opened her eyes, forcing what he hoped was a natural smile. "Good morning, beautiful," he said, the words feeling strange in his mouth now that suspicion had poisoned everything between them. "Morning," Victoria replied. Her voice still husky with sleep. She sat up, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep, just excited about the merger announcement," Marcus lied smoothly. "Big day coming up," he watched her carefully, looking for any sign of guilt or nervousness. But Victoria's face remained perfectly composed, her smile warm and genuine. She got out of bed and walked to the bathroom, calling over her shoulder. "Don't forget, I have my dress fitting at 11, then lunch with the girls. I probably won't be back until 3 or 4, I remember," Marcus said. "Take your time, enjoy yourself." As soon as he heard the shower running, Marcus texted Richard, "She'll be gone by 10:45, come at 11 o'clock. Bring the full team." The next hour passed in agonizing slow motion. Marcus made small talk over breakfast, discussing wedding details and weekend plans while his mind raced with darker thoughts. Victoria seemed completely relaxed, laughing at his jokes, touching his hand affectionately across the table. Either she was innocent or she was a world-class actress. At exactly 10:42, Victoria kissed him goodbye, her perfume lingering in the air after she left. Marcus waited until he heard the elevator doors close before pulling out his phone and calling Richard. "She's gone," he said simply. "We're already in the building," Richard replied. "Service entrance." "Be there in 2 minutes." Marcus opened the door to find Richard, accompanied by 3 other people, 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in plain clothes and carrying what looked like ordinary backpacks. Richard made quick introductions. "This is Chen Martinez and Dr. Sarah Wallace. They're the best electronic surveillance detection team on the East Coast." Dr. Wallace stepped forward, a woman in her 40s with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Mr. Wellington, we're going to conduct a comprehensive sweep of your entire residence. We'll be looking for cameras, audio devices, GPS trackers, anything that could be used for surveillance." She pulled out a tablet and several small devices from her backpack. "This will take approximately 3 hours. We need to be thorough. Do whatever you need to do, Marcus said. Stepping aside to let them in, the team moved through the penthouse with military precision. Each person taking a different area, Chen pulled out what looked like a small handheld device with an antenna, sweeping it slowly across walls, furniture, and electronics. Martinez focused on the electrical outlets and light fixtures, using a screwdriver to carefully remove cover plates and examine the wiring behind them. Dr. Wallace came to Marcus, holding a sophisticated-looking scanner. We'll start with the bedroom, since that's where the first device was found. Hidden cameras often come in clusters if there's one. There are usually more. She paused. Mr. Wellington, I need to ask you something difficult. Has your fiancée had access to your personal devices? Your phone, your laptop, your car? Marcus felt his stomach tighten. She's borrowed my personal phone a few times, to look at restaurants or check social media. And yes, she has the code to my car, Doctor. Wallace nodded grimly. We'll need to check those as well. Spyware can be installed in minutes if someone has physical access. They moved to the master bedroom, and Marcus watched as the team transformed from casual visitors into focused professionals. Chen used his RF detector to scan every surface, moving slowly and methodically. The device emitted soft beeps that increased in frequency when it detected radio signals. Got something? Chen called out, pointing to the smoke detector on the ceiling. Martinez climbed a ladder and carefully removed the cover. Inside, nestled next to the legitimate smoke detection equipment, was another tiny camera. That's number 2, Dr. Wallace said, photographing the device before carefully removing it. This one has a wider angle lens, probably captures the entire room. She looked at Marcus with sympathy. I'm sorry, this is clearly targeted surveillance. Someone has been watching your most private moments. Marcus felt a cold rage building in his chest. But he kept his voice steady. Keep looking. Over the next 2 hours, the team discovered 4 more devices, one in the walk-in closet, hidden inside a luxury watch box that Victoria had given him for his birthday, another in the ensuite bathroom, disguised as a ventilation grate, a third in his home office, planted inside a decorative globe on the bookshelf, and a fourth in the living room, embedded in the frame of an expensive painting that Victoria had insisted they buy from a gallery opening 3 months ago. With each discovery, Marcus felt the foundation of his relationship crumbling. 6 cameras in total, all positioned to capture different angles of his life. His conversations, his business calls, his private moments with Victoria herself. The scope of the surveillance was staggering. Dr. Wallace gathered all the devices on the dining room table, laying them out like evidence at a crime scene. These are professional grade, she explained. Each one has wireless transmission capability, meaning they were sending live feeds to someone, probably through your home Wi-Fi network. They also have onboard storage, so even if the transmission was interrupted, they were recording everything. Can you trace where the signal was going? Marcus asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. We can try, Doctor, Wallace said, but whoever set this up was smart. They used encryption and likely routed the signal through multiple servers to hide the destination. She picked up one of the cameras. Examining it closely, however, these devices have serial numbers. We might be able to trace the purchase, find out who bought them. Richard had been standing silently throughout the sweep, his expression growing darker with each discovery. Now he spoke up. Marcus, we need to check your phone and computer if Victoria had access. She might have installed tracking or monitoring software. Marcus handed over his personal phone. Dr. Wallace connected it to her laptop and ran a diagnostic program. Her expression grew troubled as she studied the results. You have 3 applications here that you didn't install yourself, she said, turning the laptop so Marcus could see. This one is a location tracker. This one records all your calls and text messages. And this one captures your screen activity and keystrokes, basically everything you type, including passwords. The betrayal cut deeper than Marcus had imagined possible. Victoria had not just watched him, she had infiltrated every aspect of his digital life. She knew his passwords, his bank accounts, his business communications, his private conversations with lawyers and accountants. She had access to everything. "How long have these been on my phone?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Wallace checked the metadata. The oldest one was installed 4 months ago. The most recent was added 3 weeks ago, 4 months. That meant Victoria had been planning this long before their engagement. Their entire relationship might have been a calculated deception from the start. "Check his car," Richard ordered, if they went this far. They wouldn't stop with the apartment and phone. Martinez left and returned 20 minutes later with 2 more devices. A GPS tracker attached to the undercarriage of Marcus's Mercedes, and a small audio recording device hidden beneath the driver's seat. 8 surveillance devices in total, plus the spyware on his phone. Marcus Wellington, a man who had built his fortune on being smart and careful, had been completely compromised. "Can you recover the data?" Marcus asked Dr. Wallace. "I need to know what they captured." "What they might have done with it?" Dr. Wallace shook her head. "The devices have been transmitting for months. The onboard storage only keeps the most recent footage. About 72 hours worth, we can recover that. But everything before then was either transmitted and deleted, or it's stored wherever the signal was being sent." She paused. "However, we can analyze the metadata. See when the devices were most active, what times they were transmitting. That might give us clues about who was receiving the information and when." Richard pulled Marcus aside. "Speaking quietly, this is bigger than a suspicious fiancé. This is a coordinated operation. Someone went to considerable expense and effort to surveil you this thoroughly. We need to consider the possibility that Victoria is working for someone, maybe a competitor. Maybe a foreign entity interested in your defense contracts. Maybe even organized crime." Marcus had not thought of that angle. His company had government contracts, including some classified projects for military applications. If foreign intelligence services wanted access to that information, compromising him through a romantic relationship would be a classic approach. "What do I do?" Marcus asked, feeling suddenly vulnerable in a way he had not experienced since childhood. "First, we document everything," Richard said. "Dr. Wallace's team will write a full report. We keep all the devices as evidence. Then you need to call your lawyer and change that will immediately. After that, we need to decide whether to bring in the FBI." The FBI, Marcus repeated, the reality of the situation finally hitting him fully. "If this involves espionage or organized crime, it's beyond private security," Richard explained. "And if Victoria is working for someone, she might be part of a larger network. The Bureau would want to know before Marcus could respond." His phone buzzed with a text message from Victoria. "Fitting is taking longer than expected. Might be another hour. Love you." Marcus stared at the message, wondering if she was really at a fitting or if she was meeting with whoever was paying her to spy on him. He typed back, "No problem. Take your time. Love you too." The lies came easily now. He had learned quickly how to play this game. Dr. Wallace approached with her tablet. "Mr. Wellington, I've done a preliminary analysis of when these cameras were most active. There's a pattern." She showed him a graph with spikes of activity. The devices transmitted most heavily on Tuesday and Thursday evenings between 7 and 9 p.m., and Sunday mornings between 9 and 11. "Does that timing mean anything to you?" Marcus thought about it. Tuesday and Thursday evenings were when he typically had conference calls with his international partners in Asia and Europe. Those calls often contained sensitive business information, and Sunday mornings he usually spent reviewing confidential financial reports in his home office, while Victoria claimed to be doing yoga or reading. "Those are when I handle my most sensitive business matters," Marcus said slowly. "She knew my schedule. She knew exactly when to capture the most valuable information. Richard's expression hardened. This confirms it. Victoria wasn't just spying on you randomly. She was targeting specific information at specific times. This is corporate espionage at minimum. Possibly worse, Marcus walked to the windows, looking out at the city that suddenly felt less familiar. Less safe, somewhere out there, Victoria was probably meeting with her handlers, reporting on his activities, planning her next move. And he had almost married her, almost given her legal access to everything he owned. "I want to know who she's working for," Marcus said, turning back to Richard. "I want to know everything about her real background. Her contacts, her financial records. I want to know who Victoria Ashford really is." "We'll find out," Richard promised. "But Marcus, you need to prepare yourself when we confront her with this. Things are going to get ugly. She might run, she might lawyer up. She might even try to destroy evidence. Are you ready for that?" Marcus thought about the woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted with his heart and his life. Then he thought about the 8 surveillance devices now sitting on his dining room table, the violation of his privacy, the theft of his secrets, the betrayal of everything he had believed in. "I'm ready," he said firmly. "Let's find out who Victoria Ashford really is. And what she's done with my information." He paused. "And then let's make sure she pays for it." Richard's team worked through the afternoon like digital archaeologists, carefully excavating the electronic footprints Victoria had left behind. Marcus sat in his office, watching through the glass doors as specialists hunched over laptops and tablets, their faces illuminated by screens displaying code and data streams. The penthouse that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a crime scene. Dr. Wallace knocked on his door around 2 o'clock, carrying a thick folder and her laptop. "Mr. Wellington, we've made some significant discoveries," she said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "You're going to want to see this." She opened her laptop and turned it to face him. The screen displayed a complex network diagram with Victoria's name at the center. Connected by lines to dozens of other nodes, we started by analyzing the serial numbers on the surveillance equipment. Dr. Wallace explained. "The cameras were purchased through a shell company registered in Delaware company called Meridian Security Solutions." "Never heard of it," Marcus said, studying the diagram. "You wouldn't have." Dr. Wallace continued. "It's a front. The company was established 6 months ago, has no physical address, no employees, no legitimate business operations, but we traced the financial records. The money used to purchase those cameras came from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands." She clicked to another screen. That account received regular wire transfers from 3 different sources over the past year. 2 of them are venture capital firms based in Hong Kong. The third is a private equity group in London. Marcus leaned forward, his business instincts immediately recognizing the pattern. "Those are investment firms that compete with my portfolio companies," he said slowly. "The Hong Kong firms have tried to undercut 2 of my Asian deals in the past 18 months. And the London group," he paused, remembering they lost a major acquisition to me last year. "A tech startup worth $200 million. "Exactly," Dr. Wallace said, her expression grim. "This wasn't just corporate espionage for general information. They were targeting you specifically, trying to gain intelligence on your business strategies, your upcoming deals, your negotiation tactics." She pulled up another document, and Victoria Ashford appears to be the conduit. Marcus felt the pieces clicking into place. "They planted her in my life," he said, the words bitter in his mouth. "Our meeting at the museum wasn't an accident." "We don't think so, Doctor," Wallace agreed. "We did a deep background check on Victoria. The identity is real, but it's been carefully constructed. She does have a history as an art consultant, but it's shallow. Most of her supposed clients are either defunct companies or people who have since died. We can't find any actual evidence of significant art sales or consultations. She clicked to another screen, showing a timeline. Here's where it gets interesting. Victoria Ashford appeared on the social scene in New York exactly 2 years ago. Before that, her digital footprint is almost non-existent. No social media history before 2023. No college records we can verify. No employment history beyond what's on her resume, doctor. Wallace looked at Marcus seriously. Either she lived completely off the grid until age 30, or Victoria Ashford is an assumed identity. Marcus absorbed this information. Feeling foolish for having been so thoroughly deceived, what about her family? He asked. She talks about her mother in Connecticut, her sister in Boston. We're checking on that now, Richard said, entering the office with Martinez behind him, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're part of the cover story too. He set down a tablet showing phone records. We pulled Victoria's call and text logs for the past 6 months. She's been in regular contact with 5 numbers we've identified as burner phones, devices that are used temporarily and then discarded to avoid tracking. Martinez added, 3 of those burner numbers show location data, placing them in Hong Kong and London during the times Victoria was communicating with them. The timing corresponds with major business moves you were making: the Singapore tech deal, the European logistics acquisition, the defense contract negotiations. She was reporting on me, Marcus said, the reality of his situation becoming clearer. Feeding them real-time intelligence so they could counter my business strategies. That's what it looks like, Richard confirmed, but there's more. We also found evidence that Victoria accessed your home computer on multiple occasions when you were away. She copied files from your encrypted business folders, deal memos, financial projections, confidential partner communications. He paused. Marcus. She stole proprietary information worth potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Dr. Wallace pulled up another screen. We also analyzed the spyware on your phone. It's been transmitting data to a server farm in Iceland, common location for hiding digital activities, because of their privacy laws. She showed him a chart. The phone was sending out data packets 3 to 4 times per day, usually when you were away from home. Each transmission included your location data, call logs, text messages, emails, and screenshots of whatever you were viewing. Marcus thought about all the sensitive communications he had conducted on that phone: conversations with his lawyers about the merger, discussions with his CFO about quarterly earnings, negotiations with international partners about expansion plans. Victoria and her handlers had access to everything. How much damage are we talking about? Marcus asked quietly. Richard and Dr. Wallace exchanged glances. It's hard to quantify exactly, Richard said, but given the scope and duration of the surveillance, they likely have detailed intelligence on your entire business operation, your strategies, your weaknesses, your upcoming moves. If they've been sharing this information with your competitors, it could have already cost you significant opportunities. Marcus stood and walked to the window, looking out at Manhattan stretched below him. How many deals had he lost because his competitors knew his bottom line? How many negotiations had been undermined because the other side knew his strategy? How many millions or billions had this betrayal cost him? We need to know who she really is, Marcus said, turning back to face his team, not the cover identity. The real person? Where did she come from? Who recruited her? Who's she really working for? We're working on it, Doctor, Wallace assured him. We've sent her fingerprints lifted from items in the apartment to a contact at the FBI if she's in any database. We'll get a hit, she hesitated, Mr. Wellington. You should know that operations this sophisticated are usually run by professional intelligence, operatives, or specialized corporate espionage firms. Victoria might have training in manipulation and deception. She's probably been preparing for this role for years. The thought made Marcus feel sick. Every moment they had shared, every laugh, every intimate conversation. Every declaration of love had been part of an elaborate performance. He had been nothing but a mark, a target, a source of valuable information to be exploited. "What about the wedding?" Martinez asked. "It's supposed to happen in 3 weeks." What's her endgame? Marcus had been wondering the same thing. "If she marries me, she gets legal access to even more," he said. "Community property laws, survivor rights. Access to trusts and accounts that are currently protected." He felt a chill run through him. "And with that updated will, naming her as primary beneficiary. She has a motive to ensure you don't live long enough to change it," Richard finished grimly. "Marcus, I hate to say this, but we need to consider your physical safety. If Victoria is being paid to compromise you financially, and if marriage makes her a widow who inherits billions, the math becomes very dangerous." Dr. Wallace nodded. "We found something else that concerns us. Victoria has been researching life insurance policies on your life. We found deleted browser history on her laptop, showing multiple searches for accidental death clauses, inheritance tax laws, and estate settlement timelines." She showed him the recovered data. "This was 3 weeks ago, right after you changed your will." Marcus felt cold rage building inside him. "She's planning to kill me," he said flatly. "We don't know that for certain," Richard cautioned, "but we can't ignore the possibility. The surveillance, the identity deception, the financial motivation, the timing, it all points to something more than just corporate espionage." Martinez spoke up. "We also traced some of Victoria's movements over the past month. She's been meeting regularly with a man at a coffee shop in Midtown, always the same location. Always on Thursday afternoons when you're in your office building downtown." He showed security camera footage on his tablet. Grainy, but clear enough to see Victoria sitting across from a man in his 50s. Well-dressed and professional-looking. "We're trying to identify him now, but he's careful, pays cash. Never uses a phone during their meetings. Classic counter-surveillance behavior." Marcus studied the footage. Watching Victoria laugh at something the man said, touch his hand across the table. The casual intimacy of the gesture felt like another betrayal piled on top of all the others. "I want to know everything about that man," Marcus said. His voice hard, who he is, who he works for. What his connection is to the Hong Kong and London firms. "Everything. We're on it," Richard assured him. "We've got a surveillance team following Victoria right now. When she leaves her dress fitting and lunch, we'll see where she really goes. Who she really meets." As if on cue, Richard's phone buzzed. He read the message and looked up at Marcus. "She just left the bridal shop," he said. "But she's not heading to the restaurant where she told you she'd be having lunch. She's getting into a car with New Jersey plates. Driver is male, Caucasian, 40s. Our team is following. Dr." Wallace quickly pulled up a tracking application on her laptop. "We placed a GPS tracker in Victoria's purse this morning when she left," she explained. "Figured we'd need to monitor her movements." A map appeared on screen showing a blue dot moving through Manhattan traffic. "Heading toward the Lincoln Tunnel." "Where is she going?" Marcus asked. Watching the dot progress across the screen. "Looks like she's heading to New Jersey," Martinez observed. "Maybe to meet her handlers in person for the next 30 minutes. They watched the tracker in silence. The blue dot moved through the tunnel into New Jersey, and finally stopped at a location in Jersey City. "Doctor?" Wallace quickly pulled up satellite imagery of the address, a nondescript office building near the waterfront. Richard was already on his phone with his surveillance team. "What do you see?" he asked, listening intently. "Okay, stay back, but keep visual. I want to know everyone who goes in or out." He ended the call and looked at Marcus. "She went inside with the driver, 3rd floor, Suite 37. There's a company name on the directory, Global Strategic Consultants, another shell company," Marcus guessed. "Probably," Richard agreed. "But now we know where to look." He made another call. This time to someone who could run corporate records in real time within minutes. They had Basic Information Global Strategic Consultants was registered in Delaware 2 years ago. Same time Victoria Ashford appeared in New York. The principals were listed as business consultants, but the company had minimal public presence. It's a front for the espionage operation, Dr. Wallace said with certainty. This is probably where they coordinate, where they analyze the intelligence Victoria brings them, where they report to their clients in Hong Kong and London. Marcus felt a strange sense of clarity settling over him. His initial shock and hurt were crystallizing into cold determination. Victoria and her associates had made a mistake. They had underestimated him. They thought he was just a rich target, someone to be exploited and discarded. They did not realize he had built his empire by being smarter, more ruthless, and more determined than his competitors. "Here's what we're going to do," Marcus said, his voice calm and controlled. "Richard, I want 24-hour surveillance on Victoria and on that Jersey City location. I want to know everyone involved in this operation, Dr. Wallace. I want you to analyze all the data they stole from me. Figure out what deals they might have already compromised, Martinez. I want detailed backgrounds on everyone connected to those Hong Kong and London firms' board members. Executives, investors, anyone who might have signed off on this operation." He walked back to his desk and sat down. Looking at each member of his team, "Victoria thinks she's playing me," he said quietly. "But the game just changed. Now we're going to play her. We're going to feed her false information, lead her handlers into mistakes. And we're going to expose everyone involved in this conspiracy." He paused. "And when we're done, they're all going to pay financially. Legally and publicly." Richard smiled grimly. "Now you're thinking like a billionaire," he said. "What do you want to do about tonight? Victoria will be home soon." Expecting everything to be normal, Marcus took a deep breath. "Then normal is what she'll get," he said. "I'll act like nothing's changed, like I'm still the fool in love. And while she thinks she's still in control, we'll be gathering evidence, building our case, preparing to destroy her and everyone she works for." The blue dot on Dr. Wallace's laptop began moving again. Victoria was leaving the Jersey City building, heading back toward Manhattan. "She'll be home in 45 minutes, Martinez observed. Marcus stood, straightening his tie and checking his reflection in the window. He needed to become an actor now. To play the role of the unsuspecting fiancé while plotting his revenge, it would be the performance of his life. "Then I better get ready to welcome home my loving fiancé," Marcus said, his voice dripping with bitter irony. "Let's see how good Victoria really is at lying when she's the one being watched." Victoria arrived home at 3:47 p.m., her heels clicking against the marble floor of the penthouse entrance. Marcus heard the elevator chime and composed his face into a welcoming smile, pushing down the anger and disgust that threatened to surface. He had spent the past hour rehearsing this moment, preparing to act like everything was normal while knowing the truth about the woman walking toward him. "How was the fitting?" Marcus asked, standing from the couch and moving to embrace her. The physical contact felt like touching poison, but he forced himself to appear natural, affectionate, unsuspecting. "Exhausting but perfect," Victoria said. Kissing his cheek, the dress needed a few adjustments, but it's going to be stunning. She set down her purse, the same purse that contained the GPS tracker Dr. Wallace had planted. Dan kicked off her shoes, and lunch with the girls was lovely. Although they spent the whole time arguing about their +1s for the wedding, every word was a lie. Marcus knew she had not been at lunch with friends. She had been in Jersey City, meeting with her handlers at Global Strategic Consultants, reporting on him, discussing their plans. He wondered what they had talked about, whether they had mentioned timelines, whether they had discussed the inheritance she would receive if something unfortunate happened to him. "I'm glad you had fun," Marcus said smoothly. "I've been working on the merger documents all afternoon." Exciting developments. He watched her carefully, looking for any flash of interest. any sign that she was eager to hear details she could pass along to her employers. Victoria's eyes brightened. "Oh, tell me about it." She settled onto the couch. Patting the cushion beside her, "You know I love hearing about your work." Of course she did, because every detail he shared became intelligence for his competitors. Marcus sat beside her, deciding to test something, actually. "It's confidential," he said. "My lawyers advised me not to discuss it with anyone until the announcement. Even you. Sorry, sweetheart, for just a moment." Marcus saw a flicker of frustration cross Victoria's face before she smoothed it away with an understanding smile. "Of course," she said. "I understand. Business is business." But her hand tightened slightly on his arm, and he could sense her disappointment. They spent the evening in careful performance. Marcus playing the loving fiancé, while Victoria played the devoted bride-to-be. They discussed flower arrangements and seating charts, debated honeymoon destinations, talked about renovating the guest bedroom. All of it felt surreal, like watching a play where both actors knew the script was fiction but continued performing anyway. Around 8 p.m., Victoria excused herself to take a bath. As soon as she closed the bedroom door, Marcus pulled out his phone and found a text from Richard. Surveillance update. Victoria made 4 calls from Jersey City location. All 2 burner phones. 1 number traces to Hong Kong. We're working on identifying the others. Also found something interesting about global strategic consultants. One of the principals has ties to Chinese intelligence services. This might be bigger than corporate espionage. Marcus read the message 3 times, letting the implications sink in. If foreign intelligence services were involved, Victoria was not just a corporate spy. She might be part of an actual espionage operation targeting American technology and defense contractors. His company held several government contracts, including work on encryption systems for military communications. That information in the wrong hands could compromise national security. He texted back, "We need to involve the FBI. This is beyond us now." Richard's response came immediately, already reaching out to contacts. "Meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning. Keep acting normal tonight." Marcus heard the bathroom door open and quickly put away his phone. Victoria emerged in a silk robe, her hair wrapped in a towel. She looked beautiful, innocent, every inch the woman he thought he had fallen in love with. The deception was masterful. "You look stressed," Victoria said, moving behind the couch to massage his shoulders. "Let me help you relax." Her hands on him felt like a violation now. But Marcus forced himself to accept the gesture. "It's just work pressure," he said. "The merger timing is tight, and there are a lot of moving pieces. Maybe you should take a break," Victoria suggested, her voice soft and caring. "We could go away for a weekend. Just the 2 of us. No phones, no work. Just relaxation." Her hands moved to his neck, kneading gently. "What do you think?" Marcus recognized the suggestion for what it was, an attempt to get him away from his security, his team, his protected environment. An accident could be arranged much more easily at a remote resort than in Manhattan. After the merger announcement, he said, "I promise, once this deal closes, we'll take a proper vacation." He felt Victoria's hands pause for just a fraction of a second before continuing the massage. "Of course," she said, "whatever works best for your schedule that night." Marcus lay awake while Victoria slept beside him, or appeared to sleep. He wondered if she was actually sleeping or merely pretending, waiting for him to drop his guard. The bedroom that once felt like a sanctuary now felt like enemy territory. He thought about the cameras that had been hidden here, recording his most private moments, violating every aspect of his life. His phone buzzed silently on the nightstand. A text from Dr. Wallace's preliminary fingerprint analysis came back. Victoria Ashford's real name is Victoria Chen, born in Beijing, educated in the U.S. Worked for a corporate intelligence firm in Shanghai before disappearing from records 3 years ago. FBI is very interested. She's on a watch list. Marcus felt a cold chill run through him. Victoria Chen, not Ashford. Chen, she was Chinese. Her entire American identity was fabricated, and she had been on an FBI watch list, which meant the Bureau already suspected her of espionage activities. He had been engaged to a foreign intelligence operative and had not even known it. He looked at the woman sleeping beside him, her face peaceful in the dim light from the window. Who was she really? How many other identities had she assumed? How many other men had she deceived? How many secrets had she stolen over the years for her government or her employers? The next morning, Marcus woke early and slipped out of bed without waking Victoria. He met Richard in his home office at 6 a.m., along with two men in dark suits who identified themselves as FBI special agents. Morrison and Shun, the latter's surname, a strange coincidence given what Marcus had just learned. "Mr. Wellington, thank you for contacting us," Agent Morrison said. Settling into a chair, "We've been tracking Victoria Chen for 2 years. We knew she had assumed a new identity, but we lost track of her until your security team's investigation led us to the Jersey City location." 2 years, Marcus repeated. "Feeling foolish, you've known about her for 2 years. Agent Chen nodded. "She's part of a sophisticated network that targets high-value American business executives and government contractors. They use romance, marriage, and long-term relationships to gain access to proprietary information and classified materials." He pulled out a tablet showing photographs of other men, all wealthy, all connected to technology or defense industries. These are her previous targets. 3 of them experienced suspicious deaths after marriage accidents. Sudden illnesses, 1 apparent suicide in each case. The widow inherited substantial assets. Marcus felt sick. "She's killed before, we suspect so. But we've never been able to prove it," Agent Morrison said. "The deaths were all ruled accidental or natural. But the pattern is too consistent to be coincidence. Victoria Chen gets close to wealthy targets, marries them if possible, extracts their business secrets, and then they die. Leaving her with their money, she leaned forward. "Mr. Wellington, we believe you're in serious danger. Your updated will naming her as primary beneficiary has likely accelerated their timeline." "What do I do?" Marcus asked. The reality of his situation finally hitting him fully. "First, you help us build a case," Agent Chen said. "We need evidence of her espionage activities recordings. Documents, communications with her handlers. We want to arrest not just Victoria, but everyone in her network, the people in Jersey City, the financiers in Hong Kong and London. The whole operation," Richard spoke up. "We've already gathered significant evidence, surveillance devices, spyware, financial records. We can provide all of it." "That's a good start," Agent Morrison said. "But we need more. We need to catch them in the act. Document an actual transfer of classified information, something that will hold up in federal court." She looked at Marcus. "Mr. Wellington, are you willing to help us? It will require you to continue the relationship with Victoria, feed her controlled information, essentially become a double agent in your own life." Marcus thought about the alternative: Victoria escaping, continuing her operations, targeting other victims, maybe even succeeding in killing him before they could stop her. "What do you need me to do?" he said. "Over the next hour." The FBI agents outlined their plan. Marcus would continue his normal routine, but he would deliberately discuss a false business deal within. Victoria's hearing something valuable enough to make her handlers act quickly. The FBI would monitor all communications from the penthouse, track Victoria's meetings, and coordinate with international law enforcement to arrest the entire network simultaneously. "The risk to you is significant," Agent Morrison warned. "Victoria and her associates are dangerous. If they suspect you're onto them, they might act precipitously. We'll have agents nearby at all times." "But there will be moments when you're alone with her, I understand," Marcus said. "But if we don't stop her..." She'll just move on to the next target. Someone else will die. I can't let that happen. Agent Chen nodded approvingly. We'll wire your home office for both audio and video. Everything you discuss with Victoria will be recorded. We'll also put monitoring software on your phones, both of them, so we can track who she contacts after your conversations. The meeting lasted another 2 hours, covering every detail of the operation. By the time the FBI agents left through the service entrance, Marcus felt like he was preparing for war. In a sense, he was. He was fighting for his life, his company, and justice for Victoria's previous victims. When he returned to the bedroom, Victoria was awake. Sitting up in bed, checking her phone, she looked up and smiled. "Where did you disappear to so early?" she asked. "Couldn't sleep?" Marcus lied. "Went to work out in the gym." He sat on the edge of the bed. "Victoria, I need to tell you something about the merger." Her eyes sharpened with interest. "I thought you couldn't discuss it." "I changed my mind," Marcus said. "You're going to be my wife. You should know what's happening." He took a breath, preparing to deliver the false information the FBI had crafted. "We're acquiring a defense contractor called Titan Systems. They have revolutionary encryption technology that the Pentagon wants. The deal is worth $2 billion and it closes in 2 weeks." None of it was true. Titan Systems existed but was not for sale. The FBI had selected it specifically because any attempt to trade on the information would immediately be detected and would provide evidence of Victoria's espionage activities. Victoria's face showed carefully controlled excitement. "Marcus, that's amazing," she said, reaching for his hand. "You must be thrilled." "I am," Marcus said, watching her closely. "But it has to stay completely confidential until the announcement if word gets out. Competitors could try to block the deal or drive up the price, of course," Victoria assured him. "I won't say a word to anyone," but Marcus knew she would. She would contact her handlers immediately, pass along the information, and they would attempt to profit from it or steal the supposed encryption technology. And when they did, the FBI would have all the evidence they needed to arrest everyone involved. "Thank you for trusting me," Victoria said, kissing him softly. "This is going to be such an exciting time for us." Marcus returned the kiss. "Playing his role perfectly, it really is," he agreed. "Everything is coming together, but inside." He was counting down the hours until Victoria Chen and her network of spies would finally face justice. The game was almost over, and Marcus Wellington was determined to win. The next 2 days unfolded in silence and calculation. Marcus played the loving fiancé. His routines unchanged, his demeanor calm. But behind the scenes, he worked closely with the FBI and Richard's security team to prepare for the crucial confrontation. Surveillance devices monitored every corner of the penthouse. Digital forensics captured every message, every call Victoria made on her hidden phone. Late Friday evening, Marcus invited Victoria for dinner in their private dining room. The table was set for 2. Candles flickered gently. Jazz music hummed in the background. It was the sort of night they would have once enjoyed, when Marcus still believed their love was real. Victoria arrived radiant, smiling easily, all traces of suspicion gone from her beautiful face halfway through dinner. Marcus gently steered the conversation toward their future. "When we're married, there won't be any more secrets between us," he said, watching her closely. "I want to build everything with you in the open, of course," Victoria replied, reaching for his hand. "That's all I've ever wanted." The FBI were waiting, concealed in the adjacent service corridor, ready to act on Marcus's signal. Throughout the meal, Victoria's phone buzzed silently in her pocket, but she ignored it, expecting perhaps another coded message from her handlers, or maybe a status update about the Titan Systems deal Marcus had intentionally leaked. Dessert was served, but Marcus only moved his fork around the plate. "You've always supported me," he continued, "but lately I've felt like people are watching us. Not just the media, but people inside our lives. People with secrets. His voice was low, steady, programmed to provoke a reaction. Victoria's smile faded, her posture shifted. A flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. It's just wetting nerves, Marcus. There's nothing to worry about. He reached into his pocket and slid a velvet box across the table. Not a ring, but a key. I want you to have access to everything, Marcus said. Every account, every room, every part of our future. He paused, his eyes never leaving hers. You trust me, right, Victoria? You'd never keep anything from me. There was a long silence. Longer than Marcus had anticipated, Victoria's fingers hesitated above the box. Her professional mask faltered. Marcus, are you accusing me of something? She whispered, her knuckles whitening. I'm asking if you trust me enough to tell me the truth, Marcus said quietly. About Titan Systems, about the cameras. About the men you met in Jersey City. The color drained from Victoria's face. The performance was over. She scanned the room with new awareness. Spotted the faint glint of a concealed camera in the chandelier. Her eyes darted to the door. Before she could run, the door burst open. FBI agents and Richard's team entered. Weapons drawn, Victoria Chen. You are under arrest for espionage, conspiracy. An attempted fraud, Agent Morrison announced. Reading her Miranda rights, Victoria made no move toward escape. She simply closed her eyes as the cuffs snapped on her wrists. The next hour passed in chaos. Victoria was taken away. Protesting her innocence, her composure gone. Richard's team secured all her belongings, downloading her encrypted contact logs and confiscating her burner phones. The FBI swept the penthouse one final time, ensuring no evidence was left behind. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Wellington, Agent Chen said when the team finally left. Your courage and discipline helped dismantle an international espionage network. It's rare to see someone play a double role so convincingly. Marcus nodded. Numb with relief, the confrontation was over. The woman he'd loved was gone, her secrets finally exposed. He stood at his window for a long time. Staring out at the city, he felt hollow but safe. The betrayal had nearly cost him everything, but he'd fought back and won. The game of secrets and shadows was finished for now. 3 weeks after Victoria's arrest. Marcus sat in a federal courtroom watching the proceedings unfold. The prosecution had built an airtight case against Victoria Chen and her network. Using the evidence Marcus and his team had gathered along with years of FBI surveillance. The charges were staggering: economic espionage, conspiracy to commit fraud, wire fraud, computer fraud, and attempted murder in the deaths of her 3 previous targets. Victoria sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit. Her blonde hair pulled back severely, all traces of her former elegance stripped away. She stared straight ahead, refusing to meet Marcus's eyes. Her lawyers had tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the federal prosecutors were seeking the maximum. Penalty: 15 years in prison and fines totaling $10 million. The courtroom was packed with reporters, federal agents, and representatives from the companies Victoria had compromised. Marcus recognized executives from several of his competitors, men who had unknowingly benefited from stolen intelligence. They would face their own investigations in the coming months. During a recess, Agent Morrison approached Marcus in the hallway. The Hong Kong and London firms are cooperating, she reported. They're claiming they didn't know Victoria was using illegal methods to gather intelligence. Probably lying, but we'll sort it out. She paused. Mr. Wellington, I wanted to thank you again. Your willingness to help broke this case wide open. We've identified 12 other operatives in Victoria's network, all using similar tactics against American executives. Marcus nodded. What about her previous victims? He asked quietly. The men who died. Agent Morrison's expression darkened. We're reopening those investigations with Victoria in custody and her communications decrypted. We're finding evidence that at least 2 of those deaths were orchestrated murders, not accidents." She shook her head. "You were very lucky, Mr. Wellington." "If Dorothy hadn't found that camera—" "I know," Marcus interrupted. "I think about that every day." The mention of Dorothy reminded Marcus of something important he needed to do. After the court session ended, he returned to his penthouse and called Richard. "I want you to arrange something for me," Marcus said. "Dorothy Hayes saved my life. I want to make sure she and her family are taken care of." "What do you have in mind?" Richard asked. Marcus had been thinking about this for weeks. "Set up a trust fund for her grandchildren's education. Full ride to any college they want, and I want to pay off her mortgage. Give her a retirement package that ensures she never has to worry about money again." He paused. "And Richard, I want to offer her son a permanent position in my company. Something with real growth potential. He deserves a fresh start." "That's generous," Richard said approvingly. "Dorothy will be overwhelmed. She earned it," Marcus replied firmly. "She showed courage when it mattered most. She risked everything to warn me. That kind of loyalty is rare, and it should be rewarded." 2 days later, Marcus invited Dorothy to his office. She arrived nervously, unsure why the billionaire wanted to see her personally. Marcus gestured for her to sit and then explained what he had arranged: the trust fund, the mortgage payoff, the retirement package, the job for her son. Dorothy's hands flew to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Wellington, I don't know what to say," she stammered. "This is too much. It's not enough," Marcus said gently. "Dorothy, you saved my life. Victoria Chen was planning to marry me and then kill me, just like she did to 3 other men. If you hadn't found that camera, if you hadn't had the courage to tell me, I would probably be dead right now." He leaned forward. "You saw something wrong and you spoke up. Even though you had no idea how I would react, even though you could have lost your job. That kind of integrity is priceless." Dorothy wiped her eyes. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I almost didn't tell you. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, that I would look foolish." She shook her head. "But something in my heart told me it was important. That you needed to know. Thank you for listening to your heart," Marcus said. "Thank you for being brave. You gave me a chance to fight back, to expose Victoria and protect other people from becoming her victims." He handed her an envelope. "This is a letter of recommendation, in case you ever need it. Though I hope you'll stay on as long as you want to work." Dorothy took the envelope with trembling hands. "Mr. Wellington, I'll never forget this," she said. "You didn't have to do any of it, but you did. That says everything about who you are." After Dorothy left, Marcus stood at his window, looking out at the city he had conquered and almost lost. The past month had taught him hard lessons about trust, about deception, about the price of success. He had been so focused on building his empire that he had forgotten to protect himself from those who would exploit his achievements. His phone rang. It was his lawyer with news about the will. "Everything's been changed," the attorney confirmed. "Victoria Chen is completely removed. Your sister Emma is now the primary beneficiary. And we've added additional security measures to prevent anyone from manipulating your estate." "Good," Marcus said. "What about the business damage assessment, Doctor?" Wallace's team finished their analysis, the lawyer replied. "They estimate Victoria and her network cost you approximately $400 million in lost deals, compromised negotiations, and stolen intellectual property over the 18 months she was in your life." He paused, however. "The good news is that you can pursue civil damages against the firms that used the stolen information. We're filing lawsuits against the Hong Kong and London companies. We expect to recover a significant portion of those losses, $400 million. The number was staggering, but Marcus had survived worse setbacks. "File the lawsuits," he said, "and make sure the judgments are public. I want everyone to know what happens when you come after me." Over the following weeks, the legal proceedings continued. Victoria Chen was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 15 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The Hong Kong and London investment firms were fined heavily, and several executives faced criminal charges. The Jersey City operation was dismantled, and the other operatives in Victoria's network were arrested one by one. Marcus threw himself back into his work, but with new awareness and new precautions. He implemented comprehensive security protocols throughout his company and his personal life. He hired additional background investigators to vet anyone who came into his inner circle. And he learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. One evening, Richard visited the penthouse with final reports on the case. "It's over," he said, handing Marcus a thick folder. "Victoria's network is completely dismantled. The FBI says this was one of the most successful counterespionage operations in recent years. You should be proud of what you accomplished." Marcus flipped through the folder, seeing photographs of all the people who had been arrested, all the schemes that had been exposed. "I'm not proud," he said quietly. "I'm relieved. And I'm grateful to Dorothy for starting this whole thing by being honest and brave." "She's a remarkable woman," Richard agreed. "How is she doing with all the changes?" "She's overwhelmed, but happy," Marcus said. "Her son starts his new job next week, and her grandchildren are already talking about college. It's good to see something positive come out of all this darkness." Richard stood to leave, then turned back. "Marcus, I've worked with a lot of wealthy people over the years. Most of them would have quietly fired Dorothy after this was over." To eliminate any reminder of their vulnerability, he met Marcus's eyes. "The fact that you rewarded her instead, that you recognized her courage and loyalty, that tells me you're different. You're one of the good ones." After Richard left, Marcus returned to his window, the city glittering below like a field of possibilities. He thought about Dorothy, about her quiet courage in the face of uncertainty, about how one person's decision to do the right thing had saved his life and exposed a dangerous criminal network. He thought about Victoria, now sitting in a prison cell. Her elaborate schemes collapsed, her network destroyed, her future reduced to years of confinement. She had been brilliant, calculating, and utterly ruthless. But in the end, she had been defeated by a housekeeper who simply chose to tell the truth. Marcus smiled for the first time in weeks. The betrayal still hurt. The violation of his privacy still stung. But he had survived. He had fought back. He had won. And he had learned that sometimes the most valuable people in your life are not the ones who share your wealth or your status, but the ones who share your values, honesty, courage, and loyalty. Dorothy Hayes had taught him that lesson, and Marcus Wellington would never forget it. 6 months after Victoria Chen's conviction, Marcus Wellington stood in the conference room of his Manhattan headquarters, addressing a room full of business leaders, security experts, and federal law enforcement officials. The event was a symposium on corporate espionage prevention, something Marcus had organized to share the lessons he had learned from his harrowing experience. Corporate espionage costs American businesses billions of dollars every year, Marcus began, his voice steady and confident. But the financial losses are only part of the story. There's also the human cost, the violation of trust, the psychological impact of betrayal, the lives destroyed by operatives who see people as nothing more than targets to exploit. He paused, scanning the audience. "I'm standing here today because one person had the courage to warn me. A housekeeper named Dorothy Hayes who saw something suspicious and chose to speak up. Even though she risked losing her job." The audience listened intently as Marcus recounted the story from Dorothy's discovery of the hidden camera to the FBI investigation that had ultimately brought down an international espionage network. He explained the sophisticated tactics Victoria Chen had used, the depth of the surveillance, and the shocking revelation that she had likely murdered her previous victims. The legal consequences for Victoria and her associates were severe, Marcus continued. 15 years in federal prison for Victoria. Millions in fines for the firms that financed her operation. Criminal charges against multiple executives in Hong Kong and London. He displayed a slide showing the final tallies. But the broader impact goes beyond individual punishments. This case led to policy changes, increased FBI resources for counter-espionage, and new industry standards for executive protection after his presentation. Marcus fielded questions from the audience. One CEO asked how he had managed to maintain his composure while working with the FBI to gather evidence against Victoria. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," Marcus admitted. "Every conversation with her felt like walking through a minefield. But I kept thinking about her other victims. The men who had died because they didn't know they were in danger. I couldn't let that happen to anyone else." Another executive asked about the financial recovery. Marcus smiled slightly. "We sued the firms that used our stolen intelligence and recovered approximately $300 million of the $400 million they cost us," he explained. "The remaining $100 million. I consider it tuition for a very expensive education in trust and security." When the symposium concluded, Marcus returned to his office and found Dorothy waiting in the reception area. She had become something of a minor celebrity after the trial, with news outlets requesting interviews and security firms asking her to speak at their training sessions. But she had remained humble through it all, continuing to manage Marcus's household and declining most media requests. "Dorothy," Marcus greeted her warmly. "I didn't know you were coming by today. I wanted to talk to you about something important," Dorothy said, following him into his office once they were seated. She took a deep breath. "Mr. Wellington, I've been thinking about retiring." Marcus felt a pang of loss, but understood immediately. "You've earned it," he said gently. "After everything that happened, after all the publicity, it makes sense that you'd want some peace." Dorothy nodded, relief evident on her face. "The past 6 months have been overwhelming," she admitted. "Between the trial, the media attention, and just processing everything that happened, I feel like I need to step back. Spend more time with my family." She smiled. "Plus, my grandchildren want me to visit more often now that college is paid for." "Thanks to you. When would you like your last day to be?" Marcus asked. "End of the month," Dorothy replied. "That gives you time to find a replacement, though honestly, I don't know how you'll ever trust anyone new after what Victoria did." Marcus had been thinking about that question for months. "You're right that trust is harder now," he said. "But I've also learned that there are still good people in the world. People like you who choose integrity over self-interest." He stood and walked to his window, the familiar Manhattan skyline stretching before him. "Dorothy, before you leave, I want to establish something in your honor. A foundation that provides scholarships and job training for people who demonstrate exceptional character and courage. People who might not have traditional credentials, but who have that quality you showed, the willingness to do the right thing even when it's difficult." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Wellington, that's beautiful. I'm calling it the Hayes Foundation for Moral Courage," Marcus continued. "And I'd like you to serve on the board. Help us identify candidates who embody those values. It wouldn't be a full-time commitment, just a few meetings per year. But your insight would be invaluable." "I would be honored," Dorothy said, wiping her eyes. "Truly honored." Over the following weeks, Marcus worked with his attorneys to establish the foundation with an initial endowment of $50 million. The announcement received significant media coverage, with commentators praising Marcus for turning his traumatic experience into something positive that would benefit others. The Victoria Chen case continued to have ripples throughout the business world. Several other executives came forward with suspicions about their own relationships, leading to additional investigations and arrests. The FBI reported that corporate espionage complaints increased by 40% as companies became more vigilant about protecting their secrets and vetting their employees more carefully. Marcus also implemented sweeping changes in his own company. He hired a chief security officer to oversee all aspects of corporate protection, established mandatory background checks for anyone with access to sensitive information, and created anonymous reporting channels for employees to raise security concerns without fear of retaliation. The measures were extensive and expensive, but Marcus viewed them as essential investments. One evening, about 8 months after Victoria's arrest, Marcus hosted a small dinner at his penthouse for Dorothy and her family. It was her official retirement celebration, though she would continue her work with the foundation. Marcus had invited Richard and Dr. Wallace as well, along with agents Morrison and Chen from the FBI. As they gathered around the dining table, the same table where Marcus had confronted Dorothy's son, James, stood to offer a toast. "I want to thank Mr. Wellington for giving me a second chance when nobody else would," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "And I want to thank my mother for teaching me that doing the right thing matters. Even when it's scary." He raised his glass to courage, to integrity, and to the people who show us what those words really mean. Everyone raised their glasses, and Marcus found himself profoundly moved. This gathering represented something important: a community built on trust and mutual respect, the antithesis of Victoria's world of deception and exploitation. After dinner, as guests mingled and shared stories, Agent Morrison approached Marcus. "I wanted you to know that Victoria Chen is never getting out of prison early," she said quietly. She refused to cooperate with investigators, wouldn't provide information about other operatives or operations. "The parole board will see that as lack of remorse." "Good," Marcus said simply. "She destroyed too many lives to deserve leniency." "There's something else," Agent Morrison continued. "We traced her network back further than we initially thought. She's been operating under various identities for almost 15 years. We've identified 7 victims, not 3. Some of them lost everything: their businesses, their health, their families, even if they didn't die. Victoria Chen is one of the most prolific and successful espionage operatives we've ever encountered." She paused, which makes what Dorothy did even more remarkable. She stopped someone who had fooled dozens of people over more than a decade. Marcus looked across the room at Dorothy, who was laughing with her grandchildren, showing them photos on her phone. She looked happy, peaceful, unburdened by the weight of what she had prevented. "She's an extraordinary person," Marcus agreed, "and I'm grateful every day that she worked for me." As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Dorothy approached Marcus one final time. "Mr. Wellington, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. Thank you," she said. "Thank you for listening to me, for taking me seriously, for trusting that I was telling the truth. A lot of people in your position would have dismissed me or gotten angry. You chose to investigate instead, and that made all the difference." "Dorothy." "I should be thanking you," Marcus replied. "You saved my life. You exposed a dangerous criminal. You showed me that character matters more than credentials or appearances." He smiled. "And you taught me to value the people who tell difficult truths, even when those truths are uncomfortable." After everyone left, Marcus stood alone in his penthouse, looking out at the city lights that had witnessed his rise, his near destruction, and his recovery. The past year had been the most challenging of his life, but it had also been transformative. He had learned to see people more clearly, to value genuine relationships over superficial charm, to recognize courage in unexpected places. His phone buzzed with a message from his sister Emma. "Proud of you, big brother. What you did with the foundation is amazing. Mom and Dad would be proud too." Marcus smiled, thinking about his parents who had raised him to value integrity and hard work. They had taught him that success without character was empty, that money without meaning was worthless. Victoria Chen had tried to take everything from him, but she had failed because the most important things in his life, his values, his relationships, his sense of purpose could not be stolen or surveilled. He walked to his home office and opened his laptop, beginning to draft a memo about the next phase of his company's expansion. But this time, every decision would be made with security in mind. Every partnership would be thoroughly vetted. Every hire would be carefully screened. The days of casual trust were over, replaced by vigilant protection of what he had built. Yet Marcus also felt something unexpected hope. The Hayes Foundation would help dozens of people every year, providing opportunities for those who demonstrated moral courage. Dorothy's story would inspire others to speak up when they witnessed wrongdoing, and the symposium he had organized would educate business leaders about protecting themselves and their companies. From tragedy had come purpose, from betrayal had come wisdom. From vulnerability had come strength. Marcus Wellington had survived an elaborate deception that had destroyed others. He had fought back against forces that had seemed overwhelming, and he had emerged not bitter, but determined to make something meaningful from his experience. As he worked late into the night, the Manhattan skyline glittering outside his window, Marcus thought once more about Dorothy Hayes, the quiet housekeeper who had changed everything with a simple warning. "Be careful. Someone planted a hidden camera." Those words had saved his life, and in saving his life, Dorothy had reminded him of something essential: that ordinary people doing the right thing are the true heroes. That courage comes in unexpected forms, and that integrity, when it matters most, is worth more than all the money in the world. Marcus smiled and returned to his work, grateful for the second chance he had been given and determined to use it wisely. The game of shadows and deception was over. A new chapter had begun.